Hi, this is Sitsi Brandy, co-founder and CEO of GitLab, and today we're going to talk about pricing changes. Pricing changes are super tricky to do right. We have some experience with them, and Andrey, the CEO and co-founder of Miro, reached out to discuss them. So happy to do that. What we learned about them, and Andrey, thanks for reaching out and ask away.
Yeah, thank you, Sid, for this great opportunity. Excited to learn from you guys because we are exploring this topic now, and you guys did a bunch of changes in the last couple of years that we would love to learn more about. Maybe my first question to you is to unpack what type of changes you guys went through recently in the last couple of years. Can you share those?
Yeah, I think the biggest changes that come to mind is one is the deprecation of a tier. The deprecation of our starter tier, our lowest priced tier. And the other one was more recently a price increase on our premium tier. It went from, if I recall correctly, $19 to $29. So like a 50% price increase on that one.
And how long it took for you guys to go from initial thinking, like initial design, to the phase where you start to execute each of those changes?
I have to admit that these have been a long time in the making. I think in both cases, it took us over a year to decide on the approach, which is not a badge of honor. Like in hindsight, maybe we should have done some of them earlier, but it took quite a while to both kind of decide on what we should do and what the transition pricing should be, but also getting all our fulfillment systems updated with both the new pricing, but also all the transition offers and everything else, and testing that. And that wasn't trivial, and that the deciding was hard, and the fulfillment systems were hard, and it kind of stretched out serially, and it took us quite a while to prep these changes.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And how long time it was between the first change, deprecation of the plan, and introducing a higher price? How much time was between those two changes?
I think it was more than a year, for sure.
More than a year. So customers got the first change, and then a little bit more than a year, the second change happened.
Yes, and customers who were on starter before, many opted in for kind of a multi-year transition pricing. So they were not affected immediately by that other price increase, because that was a big consideration. You don't want to hit people with one price increase and then like have another one, even if it's in a multi-year fashion, have another one affect them. So I believe that a lot of people that were on the deprecated starter tier were not affected by the premium price increase.
Got it. Okay, that's super helpful context. I'm curious what design principles you guys use to iterate on pricing. I saw some of them outlined on your GitLab about pricing guide, but I'm curious what's the most important for you personally when you look at pricing, what you would never sacrifice, what would you prioritize for?
Yeah, there's a few things we look at. First of all, you want to create a lot more value for customers than that you capture, especially us as an open core product. It is expected that you capture a smaller part of your value compared to proprietary products. So most important thing is just create a whole lot of value and then capture a small part of it. For example, our most expensive tier, the $99 per user per month, it has a return of over 400% and an earn back time of less than 6 months, according to Forrester. So that's the most important thing. Just make sure there's a lot more value in the product for the customer than that you captured. Then it's important to keep the pricing relatively simple. Like the harder you make the pricing, the harder your sales process is going to be and everything else. Then it's important that customers have time to adapt to the new pricing. So we had a lot of transition pricing, including of course, if most of or everyone is on yearly contracts, so you can go to the end of the contract, then you could still renew at the old price. So wherever you were in a contract, whatever you budgeted for the coming year, you could still do that. And only then would it start going up. So kind of,
okay. As long as the contract allow, they will renew at initial price, and then it's only kind of new price applied if it's a net new contract.
Yeah, because people might be in a 6 month, but might be budgeting kind of typically a year ahead. They might have budgeted for GitLab, and you don't want them to be surprised. Now that is uncommon to do such, to still allow to renew on the old price. And I think we were in the fortunate position that we could take a very long-term view to the price increase. It was like, okay, in a couple of years, we want to be here, and that's why we're doing it. If you need to see a more immediate effect from your pricing changes, you don't have that luxury. So sometimes there's kind of a problem within the fiscal year you want to address with a pricing change, then you don't have that luxury. So because our pricing change was quite significant, and because we were able to take a long-term view, we were able to offer that. And if you can, I recommend that. It's a much better customer experience, but it does mean that you don't have an effect in this, almost no effect this fiscal year, and then the majority in the 2 out years. So it takes a long time for the benefits to come in.
This is great. And actually, I have next question that may help to unpack this statement. I read that one of your key values is iteration as a company, and I'm curious about if you do both changes again, what would you do differently? And what things working well and what things are not working well? Because I understand the decision you take. I understand why you took that decision. I'm curious in retrospect, what you guys would do differently if you do both changes again.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think on our iteration page in the handbook, I think we talk about a few things where you can do iteration. And one of them is organizational changes, like a restructuring or a reduction in force. And the other thing is pricing. You can't go out and say, well, the pricing is changing like this, and then have something else a month later. That is extremely confusing.
But my point is that what you learned from those changes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying, like,
correct.
We love to iterate. Pricing changes is one of the things we can't iterate, and that's also why it might have taken us a longer time, because we can't use our default thing if we don't really know. We iterate, and that's not an option you have when pricing. I think in hindsight, I would have done these changes quicker and earlier. I think we spent too much time in the thinking about it mode. We should have paralyzed the fulfillment processes. We did end up simplifying the offerings at the end of it. I think I would have done upfront, set a clear guideline to the company, like, we have to keep this simple, and the transition pricing simple and easy to explain. Like, we overcomplicated things halfway and then had to kind of change that at the end. I think the price increase for premium was a big jump. I think there's other companies like an Atlassian that has kind of a predictable price increase every year. I think that's something to aspire to. And that's easier than a big one every few years. So those are things that come to mind. Got it.
And you mentioned that you might do it faster. I'm curious, what are the learnings that you guys can shortcut if you do it again next time? So it's like, what was not necessary, or where was analysis paralysis, like in the process, that you can avoid if you do it again?
I think we did lots of surveying. I think we did multi-dimensional or multi-factor analysis of all the different features in the product and the value it was providing. I think we considered packaging changes. It was, but all the while we had this intuition, like, look, we know this product is just generating a whole bunch of value for customers. It makes sense to, for example, you can look at the ratio between our ultimate offering of $99 and then the other offering at less than 20% of that price. That's not common. Like it's more common that these things maximally differ like a factor of 3. I would have, in hindsight, it's easy to say trust your intuition, but because you only have one shot and because we didn't have experience with price changes before, we second guessed ourselves a lot.
Got it. And you say about initial intuition. I'm curious how much the end result was different from the initial intuition after all the surveys, internal discussions, whatnot. So was it pretty the same as the initial intuition, or it was improved and deviated from the initial intuition? And if there was a difference, what were the tools or what were the forums internally that helped you to find the better solution than the initial intuition? Or it was just more about kind of confirming hypothesis you guys initially had?
Yeah, they worked out well, and both pricing changes kind of exceeded our expectations. We had less churn than we thought, less backlash than we thought. So they worked out really well. And
but where the final solutions? I mean, like the price of $29, for example, versus something else. Was it the initial intuition? Let's go in and increase the price from $19 to $29, or the initial intuition was, I don't know, let's increase the price from $19 to $40, and then through surveys and whatnot, you guys realized that $29.
It was the reverse. I think you have an anchoring effect, and I think we were aiming lower. And then through surveys and through thinking and through delays, basically, it took so long to do the price change that the value of the product keeps increasing every month. So the value crept up. So we ended up making a bigger change than the initial.
So that's my question, because the question is like, should companies follow the initial intuition, or they should still invest in some of this validation and verification? And it sounds like you guys adjusted your initial thinking based on what you learned with the customer, so that was still worth doing to a certain degree.
Yeah, we got the feedback from customers and the surveys. We got the delay that factored into it, and we looked more at the other tier and made it more proportional to that. And we also knew that, like, you do this change, you can't do it regularly. So you want to, instead of being a little bit behind and having to do it again, you'd rather be a little bit ahead. Now, I don't think in the end we ended up ahead, but it was important not to have to do it. Like, you don't want to hit customers with another price change within a year or something like that.
You actually touched my next question now about, do you feel you guys gain trust with the customers with this change? Or you feel that, like, by introducing one change after another, people start to wonder more like what comes next and when it comes next? So what's your sense of the customer feelings about this change now?
Yeah, I don't think we did one thing after another. I think we were discussing the two biggest pricing changes that happened on the scale of many, many years. So I think there was more time even between them. And as I said before, the people who were affected by one, most of them weren't affected by the other. So I haven't heard that complaint, like it's one thing after another.
Great.
Or maybe it was, no, I've heard that complaint, but it was very minimal and very few customers. So I think we got that right. I think a price increase or deprecation is an inherently negative event for the customer. Like they even though the product provides more value every month, they were already getting that, but now they have to pay more for it. So but I think it can be a negative event. It can be a little bit negative or very negative. And they're going to look at a few things. They're going to look at, like, is the value there? So you want to talk about the value you provide in your announcement. You're going to look at, like, how am I being treated as a customer? Are they sympathetic to my budgeting process and everything else? So you want to have a clear transition pricing. And also, I think what we got right is the transition pricing was explicit in the blog post. And then you want to be genuine in, like, why you're increasing the prices. Like, the short form is like, look, we're providing more value, want to capture more of it so we can grow as a business and be more profitable, invest more in R&D and everything else. I see a lot of companies announcing it, and they have very convoluted reasons for it that don't feel like the real reasons. And I think people, especially in the development community, are quite sensitive to not being bullshitted.
No, that's great. Actually, learnings on building trust, and it sounds great that it worked for you guys pretty well. Maybe we deep dive in both changes. I have a few questions related to each of those changes specifically. On this deprecation of the plan change, I'd like to understand the transition period. Like you mentioned that you guys give an opportunity for customers to stay for quite some time on this plan. Maybe, like, what's your expectation on how long it should take to transition customers over other plans, and would you go faster or slower on those transitions when you deprecated that plan?
Yeah, I think we gave them a very long transition time. I would do the same if I was in the position to do so. I think sometimes companies are in the position where they need to show an impact like this fiscal year, or have all the impact in the next fiscal year. We were not in that position. I think if I remember correctly, in the deprecation of Starter, it was an either or you could renew Starter for one more year at the old price. And that was for the customers who, like, didn't want to stay on that platform. And then you need to prep to move off of it. And we didn't want them to, like, suppose the contract lasts another 4 months. They haven't budgeted the time. Like, we didn't want to surprise them. So they could renew for a whole more year at the old price and have time to get off it. And the alternative was a stepped increase in price. I think it was from $4 to $6 in the first year, and then getting closer to the premium pricing. That was the alternative we offered. The great thing was that there was less churn than we predicted. Low churn, and there was even less churn. And even the customers who opted to renew, when they looked at the alternatives, he said, okay, well, although GitLab is getting a lot more expensive for us because we have to switch to a new tier, there's so much value in it that we'll do that.
No, that's amazing. It actually sounds like you guys estimated very well this value to price ratio, and those who get the value, they are ready to pay a higher price. That sounds great. And what was the biggest surprise or something that you guys were not thinking about when you were deprecating this plan? Anything popped up?
I think that we simplified our pricing. That helped. We were we ended up with like, there was such an extreme price difference between our lowest tier and the middle tier, and we deprecated the lowest tier. I think there was a 5x price difference. It means it's almost like a different business. Like at such a price level, you cannot like support customers as well. So it allowed us to have a higher level of support for everyone, higher level of customer success management for not for everyone. Like you still need to meet certain dollar amounts and things like that, but at the lowest price level, you need it to be almost completely hands off. And I think in hindsight, there were quite a few customers on which we were just losing money because of the support effort and the infrastructure costs. I think if you look at the GitLab's public filings, you can see that our margin, I think our non-GAAP operating margin is hovering around 90%, even though we're undergoing a transition from self-managed to SaaS, where we incur hosting costs. But the margins has not been compressed by that. And I think it's one of the counterbalances is not having those plans. And I think the margins you have as a company kind of set the tone for the type of company you are. A high margin company is able to invest in R&D, in great total rewards for its team members and everything else, while low margin company, the focus is a lot more on cost cutting. So allowing us to stay in those high margins has been very beneficial for kind of our future trajectory and the trust of investors and everything else.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I actually read an article and you guys mentioned that you have this hurdle rate ROI that you apply for pricing tiers. And do you have any scientific approach to understand what's your minimum ROI you would expect on service for certain plans? And I'm curious what's that number is in there.
Yeah, it's not an exact science, but we regularly have new offerings like offering compute for purchase. We now have GitLab dedicated. You can have a single tenant installation of GitLab. And then upfront, we very much look at margin. Now our margin is about 90%. With these, like for example, a compute tier, you're not gonna get all the way there to the 90%. That is typically for offerings that don't require a lot of compute, like the functionality we make, for example. But you don't want to be low margin either. And I think as a SaaS company, you want to have at least 60% margin, but it would be way better to have at least 80% margin. And that's that 80% is something we aspire to, although it's not an exact science, and you look at the value you're providing and the competition and everything else as well.
Got it. Okay. And then one question about this premium tier. So do you guys allow sales team to sell this premium tier, or they only are selling ultimate tier? And what's the overall philosophy about where to introduce human touch with the customers and where to rely as much as possible on self-service and automation?
Yeah, so we have a hybrid sales model where we have self-service, we have kind of inbound that we're responding to, and kind of an outbound enterprise sales motion that mostly depends on the size of the company we're selling to. It would depend on the number of developers, security people, and operations people, but that data is hard to get. So as a substitute, we typically use company size. Our salespeople kind of lead with Ultimate. It is the more expensive offering, but if you look at the value you're creating, it's so much. Like typically the cycle time of a customer goes down by 7x. They're 7 times faster in getting from an idea to getting code out there, because it's an integrated platform between development, security, and operations. And there's not an equivalent product. And these people that you're making more efficient are very highly paid. They're paid upwards of $100,000. The value is there. That is the better choice, and we typically don't introduce premium even in the conversation. It's not that we're hiding it. It's on our website. You can see our pricing is transparent. But premium is typically a conversation with customers that are already on premium and just are happy with the product and want to renew at that. And I think what's been very logical, but it surprised me too. Well, it didn't surprise me, but there's a big anchor effect. So you say, look, this ultimate product, it is much better. It has even lower cycle time. It got all these features that make your security and compliance and governance better. Suppose it has like twice the features. It allows you to bring down your cycle times by another 50%. Then some of the customers are like, yes, but it's 3 times so expensive. And they're focused on that instead of like thinking like, okay, what's the dollar value of getting twice as fast? And then what's the rake of GitLab? What percentage is going to GitLab? And I think our rake is very low, like 400% ROI. Like it is by fast, the majority goes to the customer, but it's very easy to get caught up in a cost discussion instead of a value discussion. So that's top of mind for us, and we have things like value stream assessments where we can do a better job and talk about, hey, these are all the point solutions you can deprecate, and talk about this is all the integrations efforts you no longer need to do, and this is all the functionality you're winning on top of that, and this is how much faster you can go with that, and that's super important.
And just to clarify, like if the customer will say, no, like, look, the value is clear, but we need to go with the premium, the sales rep would be allowed to sell a premium plan, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Or there is inbound request that comes and asks for a premium, you would not say, go and buy it online. The sales rep will take care of this, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
But the margin
we don't say like ultimate is outbound and premium is inbound. The channel is completely dependent on the size of the company and nothing else.
Yes.
And that's also because we know if the customer goes to premium, there's still a chance of kind of upselling them in the future. It's typically the longer they've been using GitLab, the more of the functionality they use and the bigger the benefit of upgrading to Ultimate.
And do you optimize more for a human touch interaction, or you optimize for, I mean, like where your sales reps engage with the customer more, or you optimize for of this low margin sales, which is online sales, and push as much transactions through self-service?
I think over time, you typically raise the bar, like, okay, this, for example, to get a CSM or customer success manager, that dollar amount keeps going up.
Right.
I think the biggest transition we're doing is trying to do more via channel. And channel is on one hand for us, the hyperscalers, like Amazon Marketplace and things like that. And on the other hand, resellers. So the motion is from direct to indirect.
Got it.
Despite also these things moving and a little bit more to self-service and a little bit more to inbound and raising those tiers. But the bigger win is to go from direct to indirect. And you see that if you look at the biggest software companies, they sell a lot via the channel. And that's something we aspire to. Cool.
And the last question is about guest users. What's the main goal for them, and why you guys have them on premium plan, but they are free on ultimate plan? What's the logic for that?
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that there's a lot of value in Ultimate, and it's a big price difference. So the free guest users in Ultimate is one of the ways to kind of address that.
Got it. Okay. So, and then on premium, like, it's just, yeah, you pay less, but, you have to pay for guests if you need them. That's,
Yeah, you pay for
that's the logic.
relative
So you guys
for
balance
more
that,
users.
right? Oh, that's great. Thank you for amazing insights. Super helpful. Learn a ton from you. Appreciate the opportunity to ask you all those questions, and congrats with very thought out transitions you guys made.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the great prep and questions. It's clear that you studied us a lot. So this was